Global AI supply chain market is on track to jump from $10 billion right now to 192 billions. That's like in the next 9 to 10 years, we have about 40% CAGR growth.
But now the new definition of AI since, ChatGPT arrived, which is more large language models, the impact was different. Here it's not mainly about optimization or decision making. It was more about automation of tasks that were extremely manual, extremely transactional.
I think it's happening right now, where if you feel that you're doing something repetitively, like if you're doing the same thing again and again and again and again, right? Today, you're not adding any value to that process, right? And these kind of processes are where AI should be.
AI has been little atomic as of now, at least. So you have to use it for solving a specific solution. Start with small tasks, more atomic in nature, and then connect them to create a more of a framework or a network.
There is a movement, I would say, where maybe anyone would be able to build his own agent, and where I think the added value would be for people like us, or even like for our customers, is to link the problem with the solution. This is where the added value would be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pace Wisdom podcast, where we decode technology that propels businesses. Today, we have an exciting episode. We're talking about AI and AI in supply chain. And to discuss this, I have a panel with me. So before we come to the panel, I would want to give a little highlight on why AI matters now and what's the scene in the numbers. The global AI supply chain market is on track to jump from $10 billion right now to 192 billions. That's like in the next 9 to 10 years, we have about 40% CAGR growth. This is through some research, right? And also, McKinsey has done a research where early adopters are already seeing the benefits of AI with logistics costs cut down by 15%, 35% increase in the inventory, service levels up by 65%. So there's a lot of companies who are already getting benefited. And today, in the next 1 hour or so, we are going to unpack a lot of things on what are these headlines that are on AI, how is this impacting the supply chain business. And to discuss that, I have with me my co-founder Shashank, who is heading the consulting at Pace Wisdom Solutions. And Shashank, you can go ahead.
Hello, everybody.
We have Atul, our guest from Buckle Consult.
Hi, everyone.
And we have our special guest today, Mr. Samir. He's the founder of Logic Green Consulting, supply chain data science specialist, and the creator of dozens of N8N automation templates. He talks about sustainability in AI. And welcome to Pace Wisdom's YouTube channel, Samir.
Hello, guys. So my name is Samir Saci. Yeah, and I'm happy to have this talk about analytics, supply chain, and automation with AI.
Okay, so panel, let's dive in. Samir, you've been an expert in the supply chain. I've been in your experience, you're seeing maybe the digital transformation that has come over the supply chain over the last few decades, and now AI coming in and also changing a lot of impact coming in, right? So where do you see in your experience how the supply chain has evolved and the acceptance of AI, and where do you see the scene going in?
So a bit of my background, I started I've been working in supply chain for nearly 9 years. I started in logistics operations, so in the third-party logistics service provider. So you have a retail company that has stores in a very large city like Paris. They want a warehouse to receive their products and to deliver their stores. They won't manage this warehouse by themselves. They want to work with another company that will manage it. And I was working in this kind of companies. The scope was mainly warehousing and transportation. And the first 4 years, I was doing what we call solution design and re-engineering. So the idea is these customers used to come to us with some requirements. Okay, this is the kind of volumes we have. This is this is where our stores are. Please design a solution. Tell us where we should put the warehouse and provide us a price. That's what I was doing for like 4 years. I was in Asia at that time, based in Shanghai, in China. And I was also doing re-engineering. So the customers come back to you at the end of the contract, say, okay, we're happy to work with you, but now we want 10% reduction of the cost of the price. If not, we are going to renew with another company. So this is where I learned analytics. I didn't study computer science. I studied engineering, but I didn't study Python. I used other programming language for mechanical engineering. But for this type of optimization, where basically, you have to understand this industry level of margin is very low. So when the customer asks for a price reduction, most of the time it says, if you keep things, you are going to lose money. So you need to find levers of optimization. And this is where I quickly learned the power of analytics. I would say basic analytics. So at the beginning, in what we can call like descriptive or diagnostic analytics, you look at the past performance, you see if it's below the target, and you try to understand why it's below the target. But then quickly, in my experience, I learned the power of what we can call prescriptive analytics, where you have algorithms of optimization that can help you to take decisions. How to optimize the delivery of trucks, how to optimize the pass in the warehouse, how to minimize the space in the shelves. So that's the type of analytics that I knew most of the time in my experience. A bit of machine learning, but if you talk mainly about supply chain logistics, most of the time the data sets that you have for instance, forecasting are mainly time series. What we used to call AI is mainly machine learning for forecasting. But now the new definition of AI since, ChatGPT arrived, which is more large language models, the impact was different. Here, it's not mainly about optimization or decision making. It was more about automation of tasks that were extremely manual, extremely transactional. That's a level of optimization that you can find in many, many logistics operations, because you have a lot of systems that are not communicating together. Maybe it's too expensive to create connections, like DI connections, for instance. So you have a lot of manual tasks. And this is where I see a huge potential of AI to automate this kind of tasks. And another potential, maybe we can talk about that later, is what I would call analytics as a service, where basically we can enable operational teams that cannot write SQL or Python to query the databases of their systems using plain English or plain native language, basically like a natural language. So now, it's the beginning of a kind of a train. I'm not over optimistic because I come from the operations, but I see a potential, and that's why we are working on that in Logic Green, and we are also promoting that in the different platforms where we are creating content.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Samir. I have one question to Shashank. Shashank, you've been also working with, similar to Samir, in areas where you're helping them build some solutions for warehouse management, inventory management, and largely you offer solutions on custom-made bespoke solutions and Odoo. Where do you see, because even now there are a lot of customers who are still in the digitization phase and their data is not ready. There are a lot of challenges with their existing employees having technology, challenged with technology and adapting to new technology. Where do you see your customers as a pain point? What are they speaking about on these lines?
So the major problem with at least actually the SME segment or the smaller enterprises segment, they do not have a streamlined system to operate on the complete supply chain stack, right? So they end up having multiple systems working together. They're not connected. They're kind of silos. They manually do the stitching work. Samir said optimization is the key. Now everybody wants to optimize the cost of or unit economics in supply chain, right? The landing cost has to be as optimized as possible. For that, you need analytics, you need data, you need the data platform. But when the moment you come to some smaller organizations, not so big in lung capacity for invest on their systems, they lack those systems that gives data or history of all the data that they have, so they can optimize that. Where we come in there is help stitch this together, probably remove multiple systems, put that in one platform where they can do the complete process, visualize the complete supply chain uh, process within their organization, whether it is order to cash or procure to pay cycles, whatever they have, they come into one system, so that now at least if you are not looking up the optimization, there is foundation for them to have that thinking that, okay, now where is my inventory is lying, or where my demand forecasting would come, which products is where my demand will be more, which would be less. All this while has been because of different systems in place. It was a challenge. With our expertise, or at least what we trying to do, is get them into the single platform so that they have this foundational data where people like Samir can work on and probably get more optimized inputs out of that and get value out of this single platform. So that's where one of this Odoo comes into the picture, where though it is a community driven or a large uh, adopter or a software that is adopted in larger areas of Europe and US, or even now in a little bit into the APAC, especially for the SME and smaller businesses. It helps them with unified platform for complete data, over which automation and analytics will easily plug in as a layer to improve the complete operations. And that's where I see one on the Odoo's implementation. Also, this gives us AI can be easy retrofit for this rather than if it is five systems that are operating, integrating with each other with some not so smooth integrations, right? Which will be a challenge. So step one is unifying there, and then AI and our standard models can work on this data platform and improve things.
Thanks, Shashank. You've been my partner on the AI for the last few episodes
Yeah.
on how AI is and healthcare, and we were talking about LLMs and AI in terms of the use cases. Today we have a different topic, supply chain, and there's a lot of updates after in the last 3 months or so. There's a lot of talk about AI agents, multiple agents, multi-agentic frameworks, and also about MCPs, A2As, a lot of protocols coming in. And what challenges Samir told, Shashank tries to bring in one platform, and how now with LLM or the AI agentic AI, what do you have to stitch around and say, what is your opinion on this?
So, I mean, everyone knows that the buzzword for this year is agentic AI, right? And I think agentic AI solves this multi platform data issue in a slightly different way. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a replacement for having a platform, but what it does is it actually gives you easier access. Considering you have, I mean, in supply chain, you have multiple vendors coming together on a marketplace. They have their own systems, and there's a marketplace which has its own systems, and the customers have their own system, right? So, I mean, these systems need to speak to each other, and currently there are huge teams actually moving data from one format to the other, uploading here, downloading here, right? And I mean, agents could easily help, smoothen this process over, and an agent would essentially be able to derive a lot more value from having different systems, because it's like food for the agent, right? So I mean, I would see it as more systems, more agents could collaborate better. And with the reasoning power of now you have, I mean, since we talked the last few times, there are many more models at play today, right? There are models fine tuned for reasoning, for code, for math, for images, for everything, right? So I can see like a future where fine tuning a model, maybe for analytics or a particular use case in the supply chain domain, would really help maybe a supply chain manager or a demand planner, right? And I would say that with AI being able to even, and LLMs having access to the internet and huge vast sets of data sets as well, and we have so many tools today. We have scraping tools, we have newspaper tools, there's YouTube tools, there are tools that you can very easily attach to an agent, right? So this would really help in things like so I mean, there are chances for crises in a supply chain, right? Like issues between governments, like
Forecasting.
climate issues, right? Maybe a ship is blocking a canal, all of that, right? So, I mean, this is something that it could get from the news, and if there's enough past data, it could actually give you an estimate. Last time something like this happened, it took about 5 days. This time, I mean, general sentiment is more negative or more positive, so maybe it takes longer or shorter, right? So I mean, it could the kind of data you could actually bring together, and so it's a better mixture of data that you have, and agents could actually utilize it more. And I would say top down, people who don't have so much access to code, and who's not like a pro coder or someone, actually gets the information they require to make decisions. So yeah, that's my opinion about this whole thing.
Samir, you've been, you heard talking about AI agents and getting all this data, which is like, okay, you now have access to news or information. LLMs are becoming now, with the advent of these tools and functions, that you can write and get more information, not just with LLM, and also fine tune that for supply chain. Do you see some possibility and interesting use cases where AI agents can be the next control towers in the supply chain industry? And you've been building some control towers using N8, I mean, would like to hear something from you on these lines.
I would have a nuanced approach, right? So after hearing from Shashank and Atul, so first, after the feedback of Shashank, I think I fully agree with him. And this is a bit not negative, but less optimistic approach, but realistic approach of what is the current level of supply chain. So, I have my Medium blog. I think I have 70 articles, multiple videos on my YouTube channel talking about case studies. Let's face it, for most of the companies, they cannot implement and productize the solutions that I propose in my blog at the large scale level because they don't have the maturity of data. Let's face it, this is maybe locally you can do it, but at a large scale, like supply chain optimization that is fully automated, it's a dream that most of the companies cannot face, because what we need is plumbers, what we call data engineers. We need to implement the pipelines of data to have a central source of truth. So, for instance, if you take like supply chain, okay, let's imagine that you have a company that sells, like pens. I used to work for a French company that sells pens. They are very big all around the world. They are producing pens in factories and that sell that to supermarkets and hypermarkets, right? If you look at the whole supply chain, what is the goal? The goal is to produce and deliver products on time, in full. The on time in full it's a KPI in supply chain at the lowest cost, right? So if you want to make sure that your company has good performance, you need to know if you are delivering on time and in full. So for that, you need to look at the time delivery versus the requested time delivery, like the requested quantity versus the actual one. And then if you are below the target, you need to understand if it's because of the warehouse, because of the transportation, because of demand forecast, because of the production. These are very simple calculations from a code point of view. But from a system point of view, I haven't seen so far a company that could do that automatically. And this is the basics and what I talk about, like a descriptive and diagnostic analytics. If you don't have this level of maturity of data, then talking about AI agents and advanced analytics is a bit off topic.
Correct.
But to raise this level, you need to implement, it's a technical issue, but also a management issue. You need to implement, for instance, what we call data mesh, where all the different systems have owners and their responsibility is to push data that is cleaned to a central data warehouse. And from this central data warehouse, you have basically all the information along the value chain. And then you can build analytics products and AI agent on top of that. But this is a kind of a dream. And to be very frank, I haven't seen a company that is at this level of maturity. But doesn't mean that we cannot do AI agents. We can do AI agents, but more as a local, like for local solutions. So for instance, like this supply chain control tower, what's that? So supply chain control tower is a buzzword in traffic, right? But the actual word is just Text-to-SQL AI agents that is connecting to a single table and that can answer the different questions from the users. That's not something that will orchestrate whole your supply chain, because this AI agents then needs to connect to the warehouse management system, the ERP, and you need to make sure that the data in the ERP is matching the data with the WMS. And the AI agent cannot do that. You need to have plumbers, data engineers. You need to have like supply chain engineers to map the processes, to put in place all these pipelines to ensure that we have the central source of data. So for a company that wants to have these AI agents that would be a kind of a smart minds that would pilot the company automatically, first they need to build this kind of data foundations. But so far, most of the company are not at this level. So for us in Logic Green, what we do, we don't sell that. I'm not going to say, I will build an AI agent that will pilot your supply chain. I will build an AI assistant that will help you in some small processes. Or sometimes, as Shashank and Atul said, it can also help to connect systems that are not communicating together. So for instance, if you go in my NetHead profile, you have a workflow that is taking, so it's an actual story. Like I have a customer that receive orders by email. So the customer, some of their customers are not connected to the systems, so they send the orders by email. And then the admins have to type the information manually. So the customer has two choices. Either it's try to create connections to each of these customers or suppliers, but that would be extremely expensive, or trying to automate this capture. Here, we can implement an AI agent easily that would read the emails and then pull the data in the database. Then another workflow would take the data to push to the systems. That's something like small corrections, small patches that could help in the digital transformation. But for this company, telling them I will build an AI agent that will replace all your supply chain departments and take decisions, it's impossible, because they have an ERP to the W, they have a TMS not connecting to the WMS. I mean, it's a mess. You would need first to build the pipes and to have this central source of data that is clean. And if you don't have that, this AI agentic revolution will be mainly for small corrections, but it's already a good added value, I would say.
So we have this is an interesting problem. And now In US, I've been hearing about people using EDIs. There's a electronic data interchange formats where
Very
you
old.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, very old, but it attempts to solve that problem, right? Where you want to share information and have a single protocol which helps. Why do you think is not picking up? Why are people? What are the challenges that people have when they want to improve their master data management (MDM) across global supply chain? Right? Why not a standard like in healthcare we have HL7 or FHIR where you know that these are standard formats to information. Why not something in global supply chain? What do you think is hindering or something
A
which
few
is to
things.
adapt?
First, for the EDI connections, and in my years working in 3PLs, I face that a lot. The main issue is cost. You need to develop them, and some companies don't want to pay. Let's imagine that you are like a manufacturing company and you have multiple transportation companies that work with you. In some countries, in Asia, for instance, some customers, they have hundreds of suppliers for transportation because the guy is in his truck is already a supplier. So you cannot create EDI connections because maybe some of them don't have systems, first. Secondly, so the cost. Secondly, supply chain and logistics is probably the worst environment to do data science and analytics because it's what you have to understand is the supply chain is between customers, between raw materials, has pressure for cost and sustainability. So it has to adapt to many multiple actors around it, which means that you have a lot of customization. For instance, I give you one example. In one company that I worked for nearly 2 years, we had to calculate this OTIF, on time in full. It's the same ERP, 3 instances. Just to calculate a delivery date, compare a delivery date, actual delivery date with requested delivery date, it took us 1.5 years. Why? Because from one instance, you have different local development. From one country to another, a delivery date means something. At the beginning, when I arrive, I say, it's okay, the data is here. Look, we have the tables. Then when you start to interrogate, to check the tables and ask the team, okay, what do you put in this field? From one team to another, the definition is different because you have humans behind and these humans are following a specific process. And you are in a warehouse of an FMCG company. If Amazon is asking to prepare the pallet in a certain way, they have to do it, even if it's against the central process, because that's the customer that wants. So in the end, what's inside your database doesn't have the signification the same signification from one team to another. So you need to have a huge work of mapping, of process mapping, that is not technical, more like managerial or operational. And then you need to have all these plumbers, data engineers to translate these processes definitions to actual rules to ensure that you have this central tableware that takes data from multiple systems, which is the kind of a central source of information. That's the problem of supply chain. I have friends that work in tech. Now I have customers, since I'm doing NFN, I have customers in startups where they build a SaaS. Their only system is a SaaS and it's internal. It has been built from the beginning to be data-driven. Life is easy. If I want to build any automation, everything is easy. But some of my customers, they have legacy systems that are 20 years old, where some local development has been done without any documentation. This is the problem that you face in supply chains. And that's why the dream of AI agent that will orchestrate everything is a bit far. It's feasible, but before arriving this, you need to have intense work of translating what happens inside in the warehouses, in the factories from a process point of view, mapping these processes, and then implement data pipelines to translate these processes into actual data that would be stored in a central data warehouse that could be used then to implement analytic solutions or your AI agents.
I'd like to take a quick comment from Shashank here on this one.
Yeah, exactly. I was coming to that because supply chain side or the supply chain industry is actually crowded with a lot of custom development tools, which each organization would have built from last 15 to 20 years. And last 10 years, I think it's flooded with a lot of SaaS products. So for every small thing like inventory forecasting, we end up having a SaaS product. For warehouse management, we'll having a SaaS product. For probably just to get a PO to a supplier or a vendor, we have another product sometimes, right? So it's again flooded with a lot of SaaS. So the moment I have a different take on this, the moment you kind of standardize this, you are also reducing the competition or kind of now one tool, or maybe there is reducing that, or you are stagnating the new SaaS that can come in, because at the end of the day in supply chain, it's more about selling a license for a particular company and ensure, okay, I have this 10 features that work for you, and get the buck out of that, right? So the SaaS companies are fighting for that small pie. Multiple SaaS companies are fighting for that small pie. And now you bring in standardization, you're kind of consolidating the industry. What happened in healthcare? Like if you see, I think there are 5, 10 brands that work in complete HL7 space, and the new SaaS companies are very difficult to get inside because already there is a set processes or set thing is done there. But in case of logistics, that's not the case, right? There is companies that with a turnover of probably under 1 million, and there are companies that are turnover of 10 billion. So that is the spectrum, unlike healthcare, where you have SaaS products even from as low as $5 a month to probably $5 million a month kind with SAPs and all that. So bringing in a standard that eliminates the different spectrum in this industry, which probably in terms of work or the kind of things might be a bad for the industry, but and also it's adoption, right? Somebody who is at getting a SaaS product for the $5 wouldn't spend $5,000 in writing an EDA interface, example, because I'm getting that $5 a year, $60 a year, getting my job done. Why would I spend $5,000 on customizing this? Today, all the industries is about that final EBITDA, right? At the end of the day. So why this? Probably 5 years down the line, it might help that same organization, but that's a long-term vision. Not everybody choose to take it. So that probably one of my take is getting a standard in supply chain industry is hard because every geographical region thinks different, and there is a wide spectrum. That's the main thing because there are logistics companies, as I said, are very small and extremely huge. So getting a standard would take its own sweet time, but quite challenging also, especially in supply chain space. And it is not that critical as well.
You heard both the problems, Atul. AI is supposed to plug these holes. These are the challenges. So why not, custom specified or specialized LLMs that are trained on, built specialized agents that are built on this custom LLMs? Can they solve the problem? Like, looking at these gaps, can there be some disruption using AI to fix these holes?
I think I do agree with what Samir said. I mean, it's looking to build a boat when you don't have the right parts could be tough. But I think taking a step by step approach, like I think Samir mentioned that an intent flow from the email, maybe directly to a database or another SaaS system that they're using, right? So for me, that would be one step, right? And eventually, because across the value chain, there are different owners, right? So if there are, I mean, there's enough education amongst the different owners across the value chain, the speed at which you can actually implement these, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a year or two down, most of these holes are plugged in, right? I mean, if people are using these tools effectively, it is definitely possible to figure out the issue of data not being standard, right? Because today, even if I have two data sets that have some completely different columns and formats and everything, with a really nice prompt, I could combine them and merge them, right? So LLMs are able to do that today, right? And if they're able to do that, agents should be able to do it automatically. And it's more about, I think it's more about people knowing what these data sets actually mean, like someone mentioned, data engineers, right? So it's going to be tough, in my opinion, for legacy companies to catch up because, probably the person who decided the data structure or the data modeling is not alive anymore, even. You never know, right? So it's going to be tough in that situation. But startups should really be able to take advantage of this, in my opinion. And because they're starting clean slate, right? They don't have any mess to clean up. And if they start in the right way, it could really help them like reach the level of market leaders much faster. So you could easily see like 20-year-old companies who are in supply chain, and maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, there's like a small company that's able to deliver value. Because like Samir said, sorry, it's on time in full, right? So I mean that with the kind of process automation that's possible today could really reduce the cost, right? So if you're able to pinpoint which part of your value chain, like it's a huge Like there are too many variables here, right? Right from manufacturing, so you're manufacturing something, there's your raw material has a problem, so your manufacturing is stuck, that is late, and then I mean it's endless, right? But if you're able to plug in agents wherever possible, and you have like a framework of how you're going to approach these agents, I'm sure that quarter on quarter you could see a difference, right?
One
So
improvement at a time, is that what we're seeing?
yeah, I mean, plugging everything together, I mean, you'd go mad because, again, this is not core operations, right? I mean, you can't expect everyone to leave packing and talking to vendors and suppliers just to create an AI agent, right? It has to happen on the side. So I think these are small fixes and band-aids that you could actually do. But of course, if you don't have those holes and you're starting from scratch, you have a massive advantage.
Samir, you started the discussion with optimization, right? And
Yeah.
how that brought in the things, and then that also leads to sustainability as a topic, because Logic Green, you have the also a motive of how do we build sustainable solutions. So today we are looking at companies that are making digital twins of their warehouses or their models. They're talking about reverse logistic models. They're talking about carbon aware route planning. What is your experience in this? Can you throw some light in what you are doing in Logic Green, especially into this sustainability part?
So first, maybe how I ended in sustainability. So as I told you, I worked 4 years in PL industry, where I did like maybe 60 projects of re-engineering. 100% of them were related to cost. So some of them for performance, so the customer, especially for e-commerce, where you have sometimes peaks of volumes, where we need to optimize the processes to increase the capacity of preparation. But for most of them, it was you need to find cost reduction. So you need to optimize the walking paths inside the warehouse to maximize the productivity. You need to optimize the layout to gain some square meter in the warehouse. You need to optimize the routing of trucks to improve the filling rate, use less trucks so you can reduce transportation costs. The objective function was more or less always related to cost. So you need to minimize cost and following some constraints. And I've ended up in sustainability as a side project. So I was working in a large FMCG company. I was in charge of measuring CO2 emissions. It was a side project. And then a few months later, they came back to me and say, now we need to push for a roadmap because we have pressure from investors. And what happened and what is happening now with most of our customers and most of the companies around us is you have a decision from the top management say we need to be sustainable. Then you have the sustainability team that push for measuring the baseline. So let's say at the company is like emitting 100K tons of CO2 emissions per year. Then they ask you need to provide a roadmap by 2030 to reduce by 30%. So then they ask the teams in factories, in warehouses to provide some initiatives to reach the 30% CO2 emission reductions. And the teams are already overwhelmed with pressure from cost, with pressure from performance. They don't know what to do. And I was in this situation. And this is where I had the idea of starting my company, because I quickly understood that, okay, it's the same exercise as reducing cost, but now your objective function is CO2 emissions or water usage or any like natural resources usage. And the approach of our company is coming from the fact that when I was doing I did 2 roadmaps like that. So we had experts, consultants that from big consulting firms that were supposed to help us. The only thing they did is to say, what you did is good. Okay, you didn't reach the target, but it's okay. You can buy, for instance, one company told me you can buy sustainable aviation fuel. So this is a fuel you put on the planes that is 30% less emitting less than normal fuel. And then I told the guy, say, bro, you know that we don't have planes. It's okay. You buy it and then you sell it back to the market and you can take the emission. I said, there is absolutely no logic why we would pour money for this. And this is where I had the idea of starting my company. And the approach and the message that we want to push in our company, and also what the content which we are sharing, is that we can be more sustainable without killing the profitability by just working in a more smarter way, in a different way. So for instance, an approach that I love is what we call green inventory management. So let's imagine you have this central warehouse, you have like 60 stores in Paris region. You look at the way that you are delivering the stores, the delivery frequency. If you are very high frequency, let's say that you deliver every 3 times per week, you have a smaller quantity per delivery. So maybe most of the time you are going to pick by piece. And when you pick by piece, that means you open a box, you take the piece, then you have several pieces together. You need to have another box. You need to build filling material, so you consume resources. Then the truck probably will be smaller, maybe not filled entirely. But if you reduce the delivery frequency, you have larger quantities. Maybe you use more boxes than pieces. Maybe you use larger trucks that are filled more. So this reduce the impacts of CO2. This reduce the cost, and this can be manageable. I mean, you can ask the stores to manage a better delivery frequency. I know they have pressure on inventory, but for the experience I have, I saw some stores that don't even know the delivery frequency. They just use the ERP automated rule, and they are delivered when they are delivered. They don't even optimize that. So there is a way to reduce CO2 emissions and environmental footprint without buying sustainable aviation fuel or buying electric trucks to deliver. That's the kind of approach we want to push, and this could be done with the support of analytics. Analytics can help you to model the current situation, so you know what you are currently doing, what you call like digital twin, and then you simulate several scenarios. And for each scenario, calculate the return on investment. Here it's more like CO2 emissions reductions, the cost, and then the teams can decide. And then they can include that in their sustainability roadmap. So later they can implement this kind of initiatives. They know already what kind of performance they can implement. And then you talked about reverse logistics. For me, I'm trying, but now it's not in the trend anymore, to push for circular economy. The main challenge for circular economy, one of the main, is reverse logistics because it's highly inefficient. But this could be optimized using analytics. And again, a digital twin of the current situation. Then you simulate what would be the best flows, maybe a network design to know where you need to have your sortation center. This can be done with the support of analytics. And this could be a new way for companies to be more sustainable without saying, okay, we are going to sacrifice our profitability. Because now, the political landscape changed since the new elections in the US, not only politically, but economically and financially. Now you have less pressure from financial institutions to implement ESG-led initiatives. So companies may see sustainability as less critical. So we have to sell the fact that sustainability can be a competitive advantage by using resources in a very efficient way with the support of analytics. But of course, everything that I said would be way easier if you did the basis work of having a descriptive diagnostic analytics with clean data, with all these plumbers and process mappers.
Shashank, we have an interesting use case in one of our case studies that we had done for.
Exactly. I was about to say that. At least Samir comes with a geography where at least you have data about what is your carbon emissions, CO2 emissions from the organizations, right? We have from the emerging markets. I think some of the small organizations we even don't have that. Like, okay, this is our emission baseline. So that is the space we are in, where certain organizations here do not have even a baseline data of how much tons of CO2 is getting emitted from that organization or that transport company. Because in case of logistics, I think transport or movement takes the major share of sustainability error or this contribution to emissions. More of this warehouse or the procurement, like it's more of transport and logistics space that takes the major share of emissions. And most of the organizations, at least in the emerging markets today, don't even have or track the data that what is their emissions. So how do we solve this, or to take a step further into sustainability at this side or these markets? It was more conceptualized, right? Azan, I think we worked on a project where we ended up creating a platform where non-competing goods or material can go in a same truck or a ship or a same thing. So if some cargo owner with cargo A and a cargo owner with cargo B, which are non-competing products, they could share a truck. If 25-ton truck is going and you have 15 and 10 tons of two cargoes which are non-competing to each other, that's standard optimization of your CO2 right there. Instead of two trucks going 15 tons one, 10 tons one, you push it all 25 tons into one truck, optimize this. So I think we were a part of one solution like this, right? Exactly. So data analytics should support this, but this is the concept where there is the very visual or very cognitive less or cognitive knowledge of, okay, I'm using less CO2 here because I'm already reduced at least a movement of half a truck. So it's the same with reverse logistics, as Samir said. It's very tricky, very inefficient, as you said. But we did take a step into that, or we tried it. Like if a truck or machine that has gone from route A to route B, or a destination A to destination B, we know that okay, there is an empty vessel that is coming from the other side. How do we optimize that? What are the cargoes that are open for travel at the destination B that can come to this particular things? So we take a shot at it. These are the more cognitive side to reduce the COT or more sustainable operations at this part of the emerging market. Probably we will also catch up getting to know the baselines of what COT emissions that we're going to do at the smaller organizations, because that's the backbone in these markets, right? It's, transport companies that has 10 trucks, 15 trucks, that is the norm. They don't even go to the level of analytics some of the organizations expect on the western side of the globe. So here it has to be more cognitive in solving the sustainability than analytics as of now.
I have a similar experience. So when I was in my last job in my company, so I was working in DHL, and we had one of algorithm that was doing transportation optimization. So you have like one truck that has to go from point A to point B, right? And then suppose from point B to go back to point A, and another truck that goes from point C to point D, and then after arriving at point D, supposed to go back to point C. To minimize the number of kilometers driven empty, you can connect both, right? And let's imagine you have thousands of shipments. It could bring like several thousands of kilometers saved. And it works well in Europe, where you have a high density of shipments, but it's even more efficient in large countries. So the biggest where I implemented that was in India, where sometimes you have like a couple of hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers. So where our colleagues from India were not going back empty because it would be not sustainable in terms of pricing, but the truck was waiting, or it was highly inefficient. With this small algorithm, it improved the whole operations from a service level point of view, from the working conditions from the drivers, for the cost, but also for CO2 emissions. And here, this is the kind of approach that we want to sell in LogicGrain, to say, okay, sustainability is not like about shooting yourself in the leg by killing your product or profitability by buying expensive equipment. It's just by working in a smarter way, by using less resources. And analytics can help in that, because you cannot have an eye on all the order lines that you are shipping. It's impossible. And sometimes the volumes are too large for a human brain to do it manually on an Excel. So this is where analytics can automate the intelligence. But for that, you need to believe in analytics. And this is one of the reasons when you say, okay, these small companies maybe don't rely on analytics. Where, for instance, in LogicGrain, the approach we have is very simple. We are very close to the operations. We don't talk about linear programming, like all these buzzy text word. We say we're going to optimize. We use simple examples. We try with small data. So we convince operations that it's not a black box. It's actually an algorithm that they can understand. So then when they implement, they are going to actually use it and trust the model. And I think it's one key for us as an analytics expert is to remove the apprehension that these are black box that we don't understand. So this is one, for instance, why when I talk about optimization, I don't talk about AI, because some of the operations, I don't know what is for your customers. When you talk about AI, say, okay, it's a buzzword, but it's never going to work for us. But when you talk about specific case study where you use their language, you speak like an operational, then they start to understand. For instance, the way that I explained you this algorithm. So this is where it's key for me, and especially that now in LogicGrain we work with smaller companies. So the barrier is on convincing the company that these solutions can be for them, because they think, okay, yeah, these softwares are too expensive. I don't want to pay on that. Say, no, we are building custom solutions for you based on the simple problems that you have.
Great. I wanted to ask about like how you really covered it. I wanted to ask like how are you are going to your customers and explaining, because not everyone may be ready for AI or investment in AI, but you beautifully answered it. I wanted to ask if you wanted to show some demos, if you're interested on some of the things, automations that you've built, which are, I'm sure it's also available free for people to follow through your N8N profile, as well as some of the demos are also in your YouTube channel. But is there something that you would want to share? Yeah, you.
I have some videos, but maybe, I don't know if I can share my screen.
I will add to stage.
Can you see the screen now? So I will go to my N8N profile. So N10 is maybe 5% of the content that I created in my whole life. So the main, if you are interested in what I did in my past experience, or if currently in Logigreen, you can go to my personal blog where you have information about sustainability, like a case study about automation, reporting, business optimization, productivity. And or if you want, you can go on the website of my company, green.com. And here, so the approach, the way that we earn business is we have case studies.
Right.
For each of these case studies, so I give you one example here, like sustainable supply chain optimization. The idea is you have multiple markets. For each of these markets, you can open small or large factories. What would be the best combination, basically, to minimize costs or minimize CO2 emissions? And here in the case study, you can go it by yourself. I explain how we are using linear programming to optimize the solutions. And in the end, you have access to my app, it's Logigreen app that is freely available. So it's a light version of the apps that we developed for our customers. And then you can here test by yourself. So for instance, maybe I can go to the supply chain optimization one, and okay, sorry. And if you launch on analysis, you can test, you talk about a simulation and testing different scenarios. Here you can test the scenarios by yourself. Like for instance, here, this is the production flows. So you have like these 5 different customers, right? Japan, USA, India, Germany, and Brazil. And here you have the different production countries. And with small buttons, you can simulate different scenarios. So here's the scenario is to minimize the water usage. So this is the type of work that I'm doing. But for anything, so for automation, we started with real case studies. So for instance, this one I think I talked about, which is basically that's an actual case study that I saw in my experience before. And a customer that contacted me few days after I started to talk about AI agents in my blog, that was receiving orders like this. So the customer was
coming on email. Coming on email. These were coming.
Yeah, and you have the PO number, the expected delivery date, and then you have admins. He had 2 admins that was in charge of taking the SKU numbers, the quantity, the PO number, the expected delivery date, and putting in the systems. And this solution that you could test here, you're losing the video, was automatically taking the information from the email and pushing that in a database. And then there was a script that was taking the content of the database, putting that in the database of the WMS. This is the kind of, as I said, cosmetic small solutions that could be done to support companies that are not really mature in data.
Correct.
Another one I think we talked about we talk about the supply chain control tower.
Yeah.
So here the idea is you have one table, right, which is a kind of replication of the table of the transportation management system, where you have all the orders from the warehouse to the stores, where you have all the information when the order has been prepared, when the order has been packed, when the order has left the warehouse, when you arrive in the stores. And here the idea is, instead of having boring static dashboards, you have just a chat where you ask, for instance, how many shipments were ordered May 12th. And then the agent is basically creating a SQL query to answer the question. And here, based on what we discussed with Shashank and Atul, is providing analytics as a service to operational team that maybe don't have the resources or the time to learn SQL. And that's a huge push for instead of building analytics products for them that you have to convince them to use, here you give them the capabilities of building their own analytics products. So for instance, from this example, what we did is we first built a first version of the chat. Then we enabled them to create their own pipelines by creating their prompts. So they were building their own reports by writing prompts. These prompts were run every day. So querying the database, building the reports, and every day they were receiving the report that they were building themselves. And at that time, this company had one data scientist that was mainly used as the data analyst. So he was a bit bored. He wanted to do more advanced analytics solutions. He was the one that contacted me first. So I said, okay, I'm going to release some work from you by helping your colleagues to do their own dashboards themselves. And now we can allocate his time to build more advanced analytics solutions. So these are the type of solutions that we are experimenting. It's not the AI super AGI that is all your supply chain, because we discussed that it would be extremely complex because we don't have the maturity of data. But it's a small assistant that would help you to bridge the gap between systems that are not communicating or between teams that don't have the capabilities to communicate to systems.
And once these chats are ready, maybe we can deploy them on maybe Telegram or WhatsApp bots.
So here this one where
it's easy for anyone to come in, use the system, where they don't have to learn anything new. Whatever tools they have existing can be plugged in.
Plus, global market, I mean, multiple languages, everything. I mean, it's much easier nowadays, right?
For the people who are not aware of N8N, it's just nodes that you connect, right? Here, you have a node for Teams, you have a node for Telegram, you have a node for Outlook. And here for this solution, it was on Teams. So it's a Teams channel. They are talking to the Teams channel to have the different results. It's very, very easy with N8N.
So they don't have to adopt anything new. Whatever they are existing, these AI agents can come in. What we learn is that AI agents can come in. We can build with your existing workflow where you don't have to learn something new. Your existing tools itself can be powered by AI agents to deliver far more impact and improve your productivity.
Yeah, maybe can give you one example here of how AI agents can help a lot. For instance, this one is the
EDI
that I told you about, the EDI parsing. So you receive messages like this, in the EDI format, and then you can translate the content based on what you see here, right? So here is the existing workflow. So you receive the email, you analyze if the email includes EDI. If yes, then you extract the content, you parse it, and then here all these two nodes are JavaScript code node that would do the parsing, right? So here there is no AI agent. It's manual. It's deterministic parsing based on code that I wrote myself. And then you extract the content, and then you pull the content in Google Sheets. The thing is, so we have implemented that for one of our customers. The codes that are built worked very well from one specific protocol of EDI. But it happened that one of their customers had a different type of EDIs. So the only thing that I did is here, the output from the emails, I connected that to an AI agent in parallel, and I asked the AI agent to analyze what type of EDI it is, and then to translate that. And then it replaced all the code that I built here and it was done, to be honest with you, in less than half an hour, maybe then 1 hour for calibration. But here, your AI agents, this is why I loved N8N, can be plugged in any of the workflows that you have built, maybe with code, and provide all the added value that AI agents can do. So for instance, here, adapt to any type of EDI messages. But I have to warn, the problem with that is AI agents are stochastic, probabilistic. So 90% of the time they will be good, maybe 10% of the time they will make mistake. So here it was working pretty well. But for most of the time, what we do is we maximize the part of the code or the part of the workflow that is done with actual code, that is deterministic. And then we use the AI agent only when it's needed. So we ensure that we have robustness of the tool and that we don't also consume too much tokens, even if here the consumption is very low.
Thanks, Samir, to share that. We've been talking about multiple solutions now on AI, right? N8N is there, LangChain, Crew, multi-agenting, ADK from Google, and Agent Space. Salesforce released something called Agent Force. Now, again, there's a plethora of things for anyone who wants to start off. Where to start from, right? Should I go put my data into some OpenAI and ask it what to do, or should I build an agent, or should I start somewhere like N8N? What can we have some sort of, this question is for Atul, but then I'm asking others as well as to, can we have some sort of a playbook or some framework for people to come to some action point where if they have a problem with that they identify, how they can leverage AI, where to start from, and how we can scale that?
So I think, Azzan, this is a good question, and I think it all requires a slight change in mindset. I would say, people, I think it's happening right now, where if you feel that you're doing something repetitively, if you're doing the same thing again, right, then that's generally a space where any of these frameworks would definitely help you. Right. So like Samir showed us, you get an email maybe 10 times a day. Every time you have to check for this code somewhere else, maybe in an Excel sheet, maybe in a database, maybe somewhere else. Right. So, today you're not adding any value to that process. Right. And these kind of processes are where AI should be. Again, it's a tool, right? It's not there to replace anyone or, take someone's job or whatever. It's mainly to reduce your workload and make you focus on things that you actually need to focus on, right? So somebody who's looking at 50 or 100 emails from different multiple vendors and suppliers every day, right? They're not going to be wondering, okay, why is this taking me an hour? Why is it taking an hour for our package to reach, from point A to point B? Or why is it that every time I submit a request, it takes me like, for an hour for me to get the package, right? No one's thinking about that because you already have these repetitive tasks to do, right? So I'm a believer where if it's something that repeats multiple times a day or a week or something, I don't even at this point I don't even switch off my own light bulb, right? So if it's repetitive and you're not really adding any value to it on your own, I think that's the right place for some people to actually start thinking, can I use AI here, right? Because that really opens up a lot of space for you to think of analytics and actually think of what your next step should be to optimize the process, right? Because you doing this slightly faster, maybe someone who's reading these emails day one, maybe it'll take them 5 minutes, and an expert who's 5 years in the industry, maybe it's a minute only for them, right? But that's not the optimization that's going to scale to really improve your business or the whole supply chain industry, right? So I think this is where people should really look at, like, okay, what am I doing in my day, right? And maybe managers could do this, and even people who don't have managers or are individual contributors, they could do this as well, right? Because thankfully today, through social media and so many other platforms, people are able to see and of course through Samir's blogs and all of his videos, right? People are able to see that these are tasks that I don't have to do, right? And a lot of these tasks, trust me, I mean, I used to do it back in the day when I was just a junior data scientist. I had to wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. to make a report from two systems that didn't talk to each other because the CEO wanted to look at the report before his morning run, right? So that is something that today I hope no one has to do. So yeah, I think this is a good way to actually spot how AI can actually help if you're doing it again and again and you're not really adding value or nothing from your brain is actually adding value there. This is a good place to start.
Your perspective, Shashank?
So AI has been little atomic as of now, at least. So you have to use it for solving a specific solution. As Atul said, identify the most manual work you're doing and automate it, and see the value out of AI, and probably use it at other places, and then probably create a whole network of agents. That's where the value of compounding is seen, right? So start with small tasks, more atomic in nature, and then connect them to create a more of a framework or a network. So adding to that, like one of the problem statement we were discussing, Azan, right? Where one of the customers were struggling to manually check terms of trade value and a PO value of an SKU, where uh, a manual effort is being spent on checking the TOT value and the PO value, where a person is actually checking two documents, PDF documents. Classic case for AI to automate it and do that, right? So organization is losing value because the PO value is less than TOT, and you're losing money there, right? So that's a classic case where you can use AI and solve it. So as I said, take it atomically and then create a network and reap the benefits slowly over, and a compounding effect is felt after a lot of agents. The stack for it, as Samir rightly said, somebody who is very new, NA10 makes a very compelling case to start using it. Then probably going into Crew AI and build your own RAG systems the moment you see the value in it, to more internalize it, because some organization might be very wary about their data getting into the public internet or the systems. For them, probably the enterprise LLMs and all that will come into the picture, but at least have the mindset and start with NA10 kind of platforms, see the value, leverage that value, then get more deeper into the whole AI stack.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I started to use LLM with the hard way, long chain, long graph. When it was at the beginning, just a research paper. For me, the main challenge at that time was I was wondering. I was still working in a large company. I said, if I want to implement that with customers, first and foremost, how I could find good engineers that would work with me, would have this level to be able to implement that, and what about the maintenance, and what about the how I could teach my customers to maintain it or to use it, because even for me that spends hours and hours using that, it remains a black box. What about them, right? So this is why when I started my company last year, October, I pushed on normal analytics. And then I saw the agentic AI revolution, like everybody was talking about that. I think because a lot of content was clickbait. It's a good way to attract viewers by talking about AI agents. And then I discovered N10. And the thing is with N10 is that, okay, maybe it would be less advanced that even for me, I still didn't see the limit yet. Less advanced than if you build your own I would say agents with a long chain or long graph or any other framework. But it's easy to maintain, it's easy to explain to a customer, and the obstacle to start learning it is really low. So if you want to start building AI agents, I would advocate to go on n10.io, take an account. I think you have 2 weeks free.
Yeah.
Then go on the website, on YouTube, search for tutorials. There are some tutorials in my YouTube channel. I share, like many others, I share templates that you can copy and paste and directly implement in your instance. And then, that's how I started to learn coding. Start not from a blank page, start from workflows that already exist and start to tweak it. And then at least you will understand what would be the potential, even if you not be an expert in this. That's I would advise. And I am following a lot what changes there are in the industry and in the ecosystem. Things are changing a lot. I would not be surprised that you would have like fully no-code solution later that would entirely build AI agents, where anyone would be able to build that. I think I heard the CEO of Microsoft saying that, maybe looks clickbait, but he said AI agents will kill SaaS.
He said
Developers in the coming 6 months. Guys, I'm using ChatGPT day one. You probably did the same. You know the limits of this thing. I saw some boredom also from software engineers and data scientists about these tools, because at some point you have more problems by using them rather than coding yourself. So for me, I don't believe in this kind of hypes. But there is a movement, I would say, where maybe anyone would be able to build his own agent, where I think the added value would be for people like us, or even like for our customers, is to link the problem with the solution. This is where the added value would be. It would not be like in coding the based agent, but mainly on how to use the capabilities. And the best for that is to experiment. For me, how I learned N8N is I took my workflows. I think if you look at my templates, the first one is a Telegram bot. Probably the worst examples to start with N8N, but I did it with Python and I copied that on N8N. I struggle a lot, but I learned so much about how to manage the variables and everything. And this is how you learn, right? Then I took some templates of very nice people that were sharing that, and then I was tweaking that to the different case studies. For me, there is no obstacle for anyone to do that. It's okay. Maybe you need to have some understanding of what is an API, what is a webhook, a bit of JavaScript knowledge. But with ChatGPT now, it's easy. But then you play, and I would say it's a positive loop, because you play, you see things working. Just chatting with your AI agent is already like, okay, it's like I built my own AI agent, even if it took you 3 nodes to connect. And then that would help you to understand more. And then if you want to build more advanced tools, then you can talk to Mohammed or Shashank or Atul to have something coming with people that have more expertise. And that would help you to link your problem with the solution. But in the end, if you took the time to understand these tools, when they are going to deploy the tools for you, you will be a kind of super user. You can challenge them in what they're doing.
Yeah.
You can help them in the design. This is why I think it's important here to also experiment by yourself.
Well, great points, Samir, really insightful. In fact, I was seeing some of the people who are like generating the whole JSON object of what needs to be generated, copying that and pasting the whole structure of N8N. The whole nodes, they are written a very good prompt. When you tell what it needs to generate, it will generate the prompt for it, and just copy and paste it in N8N, your flow is ready. So things are happening that way. You don't have to write code.
You don't even need to copy and paste. For instance, you go in my profile, you click on the template, and then you say implement, like run in my instance, and then in one click it's your instance. Just have to put your credentials. But and I think for me this is what I liked in the N8N community, people sharing. And there is a trend. Come on, I think they raised 50 millions. There is a trend. It's going mainstream. For me, this is where I saw so much traction. It's going mainstream. I got more traction than my articles talking about nonlinear programming to optimize procurement management. It's sad, huh? But
that's where we
was talking to less people. Now it's talking to more people. I even have customers in marketing. So embrace that. The more people using it, the more people will understand the value that we can provide to the companies. So that's why also I'm sharing that in my blog. And anyhow, I learned with people that used to share. So it's normal that you have to share back.
With that, Samir, it's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Huge thanks to Samir being a special guest today, sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I will drop about your Medium blog and your website links on the description, as well as subscribe to Samir's YouTube channel as well, where he shares a lot of things about knowledge on N8N, AI, supply chain especially, right? And I hope that we come with interesting more topics, Samir, with more collaboration in future, where we have multiple different podcasts coming in with interesting topics. Today was barely scratching the surface. And thank you, Shashank and Atul. Thank you so much for your time as well. And for the viewers, thank you everyone for listening. Stay curious, keep optimizing, and we'll see you in the next Pace Wisdom episode. Thank you.